Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland, and this is a debate. And the motion shall be: this House believes that global warming must be stopped. So I'll kick off as the proposition. Right, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, global warming must be stopped for a number of reasons. First of all, it is happening. Second of all, it is anthropogenic. Thirdly, it is harming us. And fourthly, even if in the very unlikely scenario we are wrong, it is still good to execute the policies I'm about to propose in order to slow down and ideally halt global warming. So back to the first one. Really, this shouldn't even be a debate. It's beyond argument. Global warming is ongoing. The other side of the house, they may as well argue that evolution isn't true, that the earth is flat, and that babies are delivered by storks. All right? Any scientist worth his salt or her salt will tell you that global warming is current, it is extant. Only someone guilty of absolute charlatanry would claim that this is not the case. Yes, there is a bought priesthood of a handful of absolute crack scientists who are in the pay of big oil, who will try to plant a seed of doubt in your mind. But that's just muddying the waters. Beyond the very handful of people who disgrace the very name of science, the scientific community accepts that global warming is most certainly happening. Public perception of it, if anything, is less serious than it really is. The reality is probably rather worse than most people apprehend. So you will see rhetorical sleight of hand from the other side of the house, who will claim that even if we can't prove it to be absolutely certain, therefore we might as well toss a coin as to whether it's happening or not. If there's a 99% probability, that's good enough for me. We are very rarely that sure about anything. So you can see the glaciers melting. Even a complete layman like me, and I'm no scientist, could tell you this is happening. Temperatures rising, you can compare that to the past few centuries of data of temperature, and then because looking at, say, ice deep in the Arctic ice cap and so on, we can see what temperatures like many centuries ago. Looking at, say, trees that have been growing for thousands of years, giant sequoias and so on, we can see what temperature was like many thousands of years ago. So we can compare temperature over a very long period of time, and not just the few centuries for which we actually have Celsius recordings. Now, the 190 sovereign states in the world, every single one of them agrees that global warming is happening. Every single one. I can't think of a single issue in which every single government on Earth agrees. There was that Paris Accords, the United States signed it. I know Trump pulled out of it. Only one other government didn't sign it, and that was because they thought it didn't go far enough. So it is really indisputable that global warming is occurring, and that's why temperatures are at record highs, that's why the ice cap is melting, that's why sea levels are rising, that's why hurricanes and so on are more frequent. So, second of all, it is caused by mankind. The Industrial Revolution caused it to speed up. The internal combustion engine, we are pumping out more carbon emissions from all sorts of engines, motor vehicles and jet engines, factories and so on, and that's obviously getting trapped inside the atmosphere, the greenhouse effect, and the world is warming up. There's no question it's caused by humans. And yes, it's true that the world's temperature has gone up and down a little bit. We've had ice ages before, but it's never changed this fast. And that's what proves that it is caused by mankind. Because obviously, until the 19th century, human activity had a negligible impact on the environment. Okay, we could burn some wood and coal, but we were not burning oil, we were not burning huge quantities. Remember, until 1800, the world population was only 1 billion. It's now 7 billion and growing rapidly. Right, third point. This wouldn't matter if it weren't hurting us, but it is. Obviously, there's ozone layer depletion, which leads to more harmful sun's rays, causing skin cancer. That's why the rate of skin cancer is going up. Sea levels are rising. Very low-lying islands, let's say the Maldives, would soon be underwater. That's why tempests are more frequent. That's why the desert is advancing. That's why fertile land is retreating. So it is definitely going to harm us. Coming on to the next point. So, there are various policies we need to enact. Right, which politician is going to have the courage to tell us we're going to have to live less well? We're going to have to live in smaller houses which require less air conditioning or less heating, or wear more clothes inside in winter even, We're going to have to fly less frequently, fewer of us fly at all, drive smaller cars, some of us not drive at all, go to electric vehicles, more public transport, all these sorts of things, all right? And we wouldn't propose this if we didn't need to. I know it's unpopular to say we're going to lower our standard of living, but that is the plain truth. So we have to face the facts. We need to do this for future generations. Otherwise, ecological calamity is not far away. So as a psychiatrist said to me, there's more evidence for global warming than there is for the medicines he prescribes. But even in the very unlikely event that we are mistaken, if we had green energy, renewable energy, as in it will never run out, wave power, wind power, solar power, what harm would that do? If we reduce pollution of gases which we know harm us, right, which we know cause cancer and so on, why would that be bad if we lived in a clean environment? If we got rid of noise pollution and all the rest of it, if we lived more sustainably, why would that be bad? This would all still be a net gain, and we wouldn't be dependent on hydrocarbons, which happen to be controlled by various dictatorships in the Middle East, and we wouldn't have oil slicks everywhere, we wouldn't have oil fires, all sorts of disasters, or even cars going on fire. If it was all electric, we would be much better off. It would be greener, cleaner, happier, safer world. So it's a win-win situation. 99% we're right, but even if we're wrong, it is still a net gain for mankind. And that is why I urge the House to support this urgent motion. Right, so I'll now be the opposition. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I thank you for your kind attention. This calamitous motion shall be voted down for the following reasons. Climate change has always happened. The current climate change we have now is probably not caused by people. The whole notion that climate change around is this ludicrous myth by those who feel a sense of self-loathing. This is an anti-technological, anti-capitalist red herring. And lastly, the sheer hypocrisy and hyperbole of the other side of the House just shows you how utterly specious their line of unreasoning is. So let's go through this one by one. Climate change occurs? He acknowledged that. The other speaker acknowledged that. It happens anyway. Before there have been human beings on the planet 3 million years ago, it's always been happening. We've had ice ages, we've had thaws. You know, let's say there was no sea in between England and France a millennia ago. Now there is. Or all the planets were in one great lump and they split apart and there was an ice age. So as he acknowledges, this happens even without human beings existing at all. So now that we're here, we have little, if any, effect on climate change. We might have an ice age coming up, all right? So we might prefer to live in an ice tepid bath rather than be frozen as he would have us do. And there he is. How cruel is he saying that people shouldn't be allowed to heat their houses? He wants elderly people to die of exposure. It's mere sadism. So no, it has not been proven as happens, and some courageous scientists have been willing to dissent. He obviously doesn't believe in academic freedom. He is labelling the deniers. There's this witch hunt against those who are gallant enough to have the courage of the convictions and to at least debate what's happening, to say that there is reasonable doubt about this one and we shouldn't all leap to a conclusion. Remember, science is a matter of interpretation and they're subject to the same social and psychological pressures as everybody else. You know, I've lived through many of these scares, like, you know, AIDS was going to wipe out the planet in the 80s, or there was SARS, severe acute respiratory system, about 15 years ago, and that was going to kill millions of people, or Ebola was going to kill millions of people. What was the next one? Avian flu, porcine flu, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, that's mad cow disease. I've lived through many of these scares. It's a moral panic that the human race was going to be decimated, and it all turned out to be complete drivel. I'm not saying that nobody died, but a tiny proportion of the world's population, most of 1% of the world's population, has been killed even by the worst of these epidemics. So it was a typical overreaction. These shrill, shrieking headlines in the press must not be taken seriously. Some journalists are desperate for sensationalist copy. So no more scaremongering. This alarmism is contemptible. So no, they haven't proved that humans caused this at all. Human global warming is happening anyway, and even the other side of the House admits that they only have metrics for the past 4 centuries or so, which are very patchy and only in certain parts of the world, and we've no idea of knowing how accurate their measurement of temperature was in bygone centuries. And cutting down trees to see temperatures millennia ago, that doesn't work. Looking into ice, you know, ice is always the same temperature. It's ridiculous whether it's at the top or whether it's the bottom. This really is complete twaddle. So don't listen to the drivel from the other side. Anyway, it's about people wanting to feel disgusted with themselves. This quasi-religious language is used. We're said to be iniquitous because we want development. And really, it's the privileged white world wanting to impoverish the less economic developed countries, saying, oh yeah, we'll live our highly developed life and we're going to go on several Caribbean holidays a year, but people, let's say in India and China, are struggling to lift themselves out of penury. No, it's not for you. You've got to live a life without technology. You're not allowed electricity or running water. We are. You're not allowed modern medicine. You've got to die at a young age, but we're going to live to 100. This is nauseating. The selfishness of it is blatant. This really is egotism incarnate. So, there's this ridiculous conspiracy theory that big oil is buying scientists, which would be completely unethical. Scientists don't do that. They always declare their hand if they're funded by whoever. And even those scientists who are funded by oil companies, that doesn't prove that they're wrong. If you're funded by the environmental lobby, that doesn't prove that you're right. The data speaks for itself. So it's a completely bird-brained argument that to say that if you're funded by such and such a company, that your findings must be false. They could be the most accurate in the world. So it's a heavily politicized thing. It's a far-left fallacy. So stop peddling these green myths. It's the Green Party, the social justice warriors, the tree huggers, the weirds with beards of both sexes, the sandal wearers. Go and live in a commune then. What are you doing in here with electricity? Get out, go and live in a cave if that's what you think. Some people are anti-technological. There's always been Ludditism, those who detest technological advance and think that poverty is somehow picturesque, are against development, except when it comes to them. They insist on living in 5-star hotels. They just want hoi polloi to live impecuniously. So practice what you preach. And you even doubt your own argument. You were suggesting that yourself. You were casting doubt on it, as you should be. So even you have a modicum of honesty. So your real agenda is anti-capitalism, because as you've lost the argument, you socialists, then you come up with this canal about global warming to try and demonize hard-working business executives, people in the oil industry and so on, who keep the wheels of industry turning, who have lifted hundreds of millions of people out of abject poverty. So let me go over the reasons again why we shall vote down this terrible motion, because climate change has always happened anyway, because there is no proof that it's caused by the human race, because this is a complete political myth by the ultra-left, and because those who claim to believe in climate change, Al Gore and so on, they still jet around the world, they still live in huge houses, burning loads of electricity. If they actually believed in global warming, they would not be living in the lap of luxury. And that is why I know that this motion shall fall.